The National Desk, America's News, now.
Millions of people at risk for severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and hail tonight. Where it's the worst and who's getting hit next. A high-capacity magazine ban ruled unconstitutional. Why a federal court sees this as an unquestioned right and the reason the ban is still in effect. Then what some states are now doing that's putting President Biden's student loan forgiveness plans at risk. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now, severe weather hitting parts of the South, leaving 13 million people under flood alerts and 5 million under tornado watches. Severe storms bringing in heavy rain, damaging wind, and a flooding risk to the southern plains and Mississippi Valley tonight. Tornadoes off of at least EF2 strength and large hail expected in Texas and Louisiana. Severe weather expected to reach the Florida Panhandle by tomorrow and the Great Lakes by Thursday night. And tonight, the first parents convicted in a U.S. mass school shooting have been sentenced 10 to 15 years for James and Jennifer Crumbley, the two held responsible for failing to prevent their teen son, Ethan, from killing 4 of his fellow students in the deadliest school shooting in Michigan's history. The Crumbleys' attorneys had asked for a max 5-year sentence, but the judge gave a tougher sentence just after listening to heartbreaking statements from the victims' families.
While you were hiding, I was planning her funeral. And while you were running away from your son and your responsibilities, I was forced to do the worst possible thing a parent could do. I was forced to say goodbye to my Madison.
The judge in the case said the sentencing should help serve as a deterrent to school shootings in the future.
Open the door now! Open the door now! Open the door now! 1164 David, shots fired, shots fired!
And those are tense moments. By the way, this video may be disturbing for some. You're looking at newly released body cam footage from Chicago police. 96 shots were fired in 41 seconds during a traffic stop last month, responding to the driver that they say fired first. That man, 26-year-old Dexter Reed, was ultimately killed while one officer was shot in the wrist. Officials said a gun was recovered from the front passenger seat of Reed's vehicle. The release of the video comes after mounting questions from Reed's family and community advocates who said the police had failed to provide evidence that Reed fired at police first. And new questions now on whether or not crime trends are worse than reported. Here's more with national correspondent Kayla Gaskins looking at a new independent study on which way the trends are actually going.
Crime levels in America could be worse than federal statistics show. A new report by an independent group of law enforcement officials and analysts claims violent crime rates are notably higher than what's reported by FBI data. The National Desk spoke with one of the authors, former Trump official Mark Morgan.
We're not getting the accurate reporting, the accurate picture of the crime trends.
In 2021, the FBI transitioned to a new system to track crime trends. It is voluntary for local law enforcement to send in data. However, Jason Johnson with the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund points out the FBI's new system is complex to navigate. Some of the nation's largest cities, like New York and Los Angeles, don't even send in their data, leaving big holes that critics say skew national numbers.
Reporting is burdensome, and that's the reason why even these large agencies with lots of resources, I mean, these are not under-resourced agencies, find it too burdensome to comply with. So the compliance is not good.
For example, when it comes to homicide rates, FBI crime data shows an 8.3% increase from 2019 to 2023. However, data from the CDC says homicides rose 19.9% over the same time frame, a double-digit difference. Other large discrepancies exist between the FBI data and victim-based reporting. From 2019 to 2022, victims reported a 30% increase in robberies. FBI data says robberies decreased by 18% over the same time frame.
It was a mistake to produce a report that you know was fundamentally flawed. It shouldn't have been, look, I think it shouldn't have been produced at all.
Mark Morgan actually called it irresponsible for the FBI to release the report with incomplete data. The FBI telling me today, though, they have no comment on this new external report.
And Kayla, what do recent polls say about how Americans feel about crime and how everything is playing out right now?
So, Amira, a Gallup poll from March finding nearly 80% of Americans say they personally worry about crime and violence either a great deal or a fair amount. Now, Americans are placing crime at the same level of importance as inflation in weighing what issues matter most to them, meaning it will likely play a role in November's elections. Amira.
Indeed it will. All right, Kayla Gaskins reporting live in D.C. for us. Thank you. And the United States Supreme Court has denied the final appeals of Missouri death row inmate Brian Dorsey, keeping the execution set for tonight. Dorsey was convicted of killing his cousin and her husband nearly 2 decades ago, but more than 70 correctional officers signed a clemency petition in an attempt to spare his life. Missouri Governor Mike Parson rejected that clemency request last night. And developing now, the murder trial of 26-year-old Samuel Woodward now underway. He's accused of stabbing and killing University of Pennsylvania student Blaze Bernstein in January of 2018 in an act of hate. Bernstein was gay and Jewish. Authorities say DNA evidence connects Woodward to the crime, and he had anti-gay, anti-Semitic content on his cell phone, they say. Woodward has pleaded not guilty. A New York appellate judge has rejected former President Donald Trump's attempt to delay his criminal hush money trial set to begin next week. The full panel of judges on the appeals court will meet to rule on Trump's challenge to the gag order placed upon him by presiding judge Juan Merchan. Trump says the order violates his First Amendment rights. Without any other delay, jury selection in this trial will begin on Monday, April 15th. And Arizona's near total abortion ban, it's been ruled by the state Supreme Court to be enforceable. But Arizona Attorney General Democrat Chris Mays has pledged not to enforce it. Enacted in 1864, the 160-year-old law criminalizes abortion by making it a felony, punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison for anyone who performs or helps a woman get one at any time. An exception was added to the law back in 1913 if the woman's life is in danger. Before this ruling, Arizona allowed abortions up to 15 weeks. Norfolk Southern has agreed to a $600 million settlement to address class action lawsuits within 20 miles of last year's East Palestine, Ohio, toxic train derailment. Officials say the town is now safe, but some locals still complain of symptoms like burning eyes. People who live within 10 miles of the derailment site can get extra compensation under the settlement. A court still needs to approve it. A Washington state law banning high-capacity firearm magazines has been declared unconstitutional. If the ruling stands upon appeal, it could change the debate in Washington, D.C. on how far Congress can go in restricting the right to bear arms. The National Desk's Barry Mangold has the latest.
There are reasonable restrictions on all of our constitutional rights, and that includes the Second Amendment.
Washington Attorney General and gubernatorial candidate Bob Ferguson says he's very assured that the state's ban on selling firearm magazines with more than 10 rounds will survive a legal challenge. On Monday, Cowlitz County Judge Gary Bashore deemed the law unconstitutional and issued an injunction, writing, quote, "It is logically inconceivable that an item that is constitutionally protected to possess could be prohibited from sale to the very people who have the protected right to possess it." Shortly after, the Washington State Supreme Court halted that ruling and has taken over the case.
I thought he did a very thorough and well-detailed, well-crafted opinion.
The initial challenge to the law came from Gators Custom Guns, a Kelso firearms retailer that was accused of illegally selling large magazines. The store's attorney, Pete Serrano, says the law hinders the rights of legal gun owners.
Fundamentally, what this law does is it prohibits law-abiding citizens from owning firearms that have higher than 10-round capacity. some arms are designed specifically with greater than 10 round capacities.
Ferguson called the Cowlitz County ruling incorrect and told K2 that precedent is on his side.
Obviously respect the fact that people have different views on this. That's the nature of living in a democracy like this. But the one thing that is not in dispute is that court after court after court after court has upheld these laws as being consistent with the Second Amendment, and those judges have been judges of all orientations.
Israel has obligations. It has responsibilities that are moral, that are strategic, and that are legal.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken keeping up the pressure today on Israel as the country gets one day closer to launching an invasion in Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking in bold words, reiterating his plan to invade the city, saying, quote, "No force in the world will stop a planned campaign." A date has been set, though it has not been revealed. This, despite global leaders mounting concerns over more civilian casualties and a deepening hunger crisis in Gaza. Israel argues Hamas cannot be defeated without militarily entering the city, but diplomatically, negotiations appearing to stall. Hamas and Israel seemingly unable to bridge big gaps. Hamas wants a timeline for Israel's full retreat from Gaza and an unconditional return to the north for all Palestinians. Israel has called many of those demands delusional. Coming up, warnings about artificial intelligence are getting more dire. Why so little is being done in this country to rein it in. Then rebuilding the collapsed Key Bridge could cost over $1 billion. What Maryland's governor is now urging for federal lawmakers to do. Plus, street racing has killed several people in the state of Washington. What's being done to get a handle on this problem when we come back? Seven more states are now suing the Biden administration over the SAVE plan to forgive student debt. Missouri, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, Oklahoma, and North Dakota filed a complaint today following 11 other states. Missouri's attorney general said the plan is illegal and would burden taxpayers with $475 billion. The Education Department has argued the plan uses authority granted by Congress. And now we move to AI. Are we doing enough to combat the risks of artificial intelligence in our society? It's a question that Congress has discussed, but it has prompted other countries to implement far more serious measures to meet the moment. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell.
Dire warnings about artificial intelligence range from concerns about privacy, inequality, bias, to job losses, to this. In Japan, the country's biggest newspaper and its largest telecom company warn without major changes, social order could collapse. In this country, there are alarm bells sounding about AI's potential ability to harm our democracy in an election year.
It's one of my areas of greatest concern, the more general ability of these models to manipulate, to persuade, to provide sort of one-on-one interactive disinformation.
Despite those concerns raised by the head of one of the leading AI companies in the world, members of Congress do not seem to have passed the debate stage, though there seems to be bipartisan agreement on AI's power and on the need to act.
Will we strike that balance between technological innovation and our ethical and moral responsibility to humanity?
We cannot afford to be as late to responsibly regulating generative AI as we have been to social media.
The lack of action, a sharp contrast to other parts of the world.
We delivered. The EU delivered.
The European Union last month approved sweeping AI legislation, including specific rules and restrictions for how it can be used, an attempt to keep humans in control of the technology and not the other way around.
We have forever attached to the concept of artificial intelligence the fundamental values that form the basis of our societies.
A sentiment experts here also worry about.
If this stuff gets out of control, gets out of hand, spreads wildly, then people don't know what they can trust. They're not going to know what's real, they're not going to know what's fake, and they're going to conclude that they can't believe anything.
Lawmakers have said time and time again they see an urgency in the need to regulate artificial intelligence. But we have heard similar sentiments about the need to rein in social media with very little action following those calls for change. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzau.
About 2 weeks ago, a part of our soul fell into the Patapsco River, a part of our landscape, and a part of what makes Baltimore, Maryland so special.
The governor of Maryland was on Capitol Hill today urging federal lawmakers to finalize funding efforts to rebuild the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge. President Biden promised the federal government would cover 100% of it. Maryland's bipartisan delegation is introducing a bill very soon in hopes that this funding moves through quickly.
A moment like this, when you see a tragedy and disaster that has national impact and national scope, you realize just how indispensable the federal government is.
In this tragedy, Maryland should not have to bear a part of the cost. That's going to be the focus of, I believe, the first piece of legislation that comes through.
The wreckage has blocked the main shipping channel at the Port of Baltimore for nearly 2 weeks. Rebuilding could cost more than $1 billion, but there's no official estimate quite yet. 6 people died in that collapse. 3 bodies have been recovered, and there are still 3 missing. And just hours before Tesla was set to go to court in a wrongful death lawsuit, the car company settled the complaint. The family of an Apple engineer who died in a Model X crash while using autopilot in 2018 alleges the carmaker promoted the feature, yet failed to protect drivers. The NTSB, which investigated the crash, said Tesla's driver assistance systems were partly to blame. If a jury had found Tesla liable, it would have set a precedent for a host of other product liability suits that the EV maker is facing. The settlement amount on that particular case, the wrongful death case, has not been disclosed. More than 200 chemical plants across the country will soon be required to reduce toxic emissions that are likely to cause cancer. The EPA issued new rules today to lower emissions of chloroprene, ethylene oxide, and other harmful pollutants. 218 facilities across Texas and Louisiana, also the Ohio River Valley, West Virginia, and the Upper South will have 2 years to comply with the new regulations. In your health alert tonight, the cardiac chain of survival recently made a big difference for a family who needed to save their own dad's life. Medical reporter Liz Bonis shares how it all started with a woman who loves to run.
Rocio, who you see here, has been an avid runner for years.
Your health alert tonight. The cardiac chain of survival recently made a big difference for a family who needed to save their own dad's life. Medical reporter Liz Bonis shares how it all started with a woman who loves to run.
Rocio, who you see here, has been an avid runner for years. And just a few weeks ago, the race she...
And they actually had to shock his heart back into rhythm.
That's somebody, part of UC Health's event medicine team, Dr. Dustin Calhoun.
He reacted. He did exactly what you should do. He started hands-only CPR very, very quickly. That act alone doubles a patient's chance of survival.
Sure enough, here's Dad. He was transported to the hospital and did survive this cardiac arrest. We met up with the Bauer family and the American Heart Association following all this.
This is why we do what we do.
It's hard not to see, Deuce and Rocio say.
I felt like if he hadn't been there at that moment.
Some pretty remarkable timing in all this.
It's a God thing because he was right there at the finish line of a Heart mini marathon and he goes into cardiac arrest.
It's because of CPR, it's because of the research we've done and people actually implementing it that the man is alive.
Now, the American Heart Association does have ongoing programs to learn bystander CPR. If you're not certified or trained, we hope you'll reach out to them. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonis reporting.
Liz, thank you. And coming up, squatting is increasing in South Carolina. What state lawmakers are now doing to help property owners. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
High speeds and outrageous behavior behind the wheel. As a crowd cheered on this weekend sideshow taking over a Wallingford intersection. Marks in the street now left in the road show where it happened, right outside Golden Oldies Records.
I can't afford to rebuild the shop.
Owner David Hickerson said 2 cars have already crashed through their store. So when he saw this video today...
And it's going to impact not just us, but, all of the local community businesses.
These racers aren't just challenging each other.
This needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
They're also challenging a new Washington law. The expanded street racing statute took effect at the start of the year. It gives police the power to impound cars used in races.
We need to send a strong message to those that are putting others at risk by their reckless behavior.
A now fire substitute teacher is in even more trouble. 21-year-old Corey Pierce, who is currently behind bars, faces new sex crime charges. Accusations: he sexually battered a minor between 12 and 18 years old. Last Friday, Palm Beach County School District Police also charged Pierce with 1 count of an authority figure soliciting lewd conduct with a student at Woodlands Middle School, located in western Palm Beach County near Lake Worth Beach. School police arrested Pierce on March 29th. According to the arrest report, 2 students say they got messages from Pierce through social media and that he kissed them while in the classroom.
That's horrifying news because we trust these teachers with our kids.
and for some teacher to take advantage of a kid.
School is supposed to be a safe place for kids to be at. It's supposed to make us feel safe while we're doing our daily errands, going to work, and it's supposed to be a learning environment for them.
After a lengthy legal process lasting nearly a year, Tammy Brinson evicted the squatters from her Berkeley County property.
It's very, very upsetting, and the anxiety is unbelievable as you're watching your property be damaged, or you're having to pay bills for a property that you have absolutely no control over. It can really be financially devastating and also very, very emotionally taxing to try to get these people out.
Brinson and state lawmakers would like to see property rights reside with the owner of the property.
We've made it too difficult for a rightful property owner to be able to remove somebody.
Senator Josh Kimbrell is sponsoring Bill 1231 to allow property owners to essentially skip the eviction process.
The people who are trying to take possession back of their own home are having to go through an extensive and expensive process just to get possession of their own personal property or their private property back.
Coming up, what we know about the winner of that whopping $1.3 billion Powerball jackpot and where the ticket was sold. The winner of that $1.3 billion Powerball jackpot has come forward to claim their prize. The lottery was won by a single ticket in Oregon after drawing over the weekend. With few exceptions, winning players in Oregon cannot remain anonymous. Now, we still don't know who won that ticket, but we do know where it was sold at a place called Plaid Pantry in Portland, Oregon. The store gets a $100,000 bonus. One Oregon resident shares what she would have done if she won.
Renovate my dad's house and buy me a house. You know, want to leave a legacy for my kids.
Sounds about right. And this jackpot was the 8th largest jackpot ever won in the United States with a cash take-home value of $621 million. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Make it a great Tuesday night. I'm Amira David. Thanks for watching.